Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudiyayat. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto the author, Srila Vyasadeva. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, and the third canto, which is entitled Status Quo. And we are on chapter 2, text 3. Chapter 2, text 3. Can do one Sanskrit word at a time. Sa, katam, sevaya, tasya, kalina, jarasam, gata, vista, vartam, pratibhuyat, vartu, padam, anusmaran, sakatam sevayatasya, kalena jarasam gataha, vistuvartam pratibhuyat, vartupada vanusmaran, sakatam sevayatasya, kalena jarasam gataha, vistuvartam pratibhuyat, vartupada vanusmaran, sakatam sevayatasya, kalena jarasam gataha, vistuvartam pratibhuyat, vartupada vanusmaran. Sakatam sevayatasya, kalena jarasam gataha,
Vishtovartam pratibhuyat, vartupada
manusmaran, sakatam sevayatasya, kalena jarasam gataha, vistuvartam pratibhuyat, vartupada vanusmaran, Sakyatam Sevayatasya Karina Jasam Gataha Krishnavartam Patibhuyat Artupadam Yudamaram
Sakatam Sevaya Tasha
Sakatam Sevayatasya
Kalina Jara Samgata
Kalena Jasam Gataha
Vistovartam Prati Bruyad
Vistovartam Patibhuyat
Partupada Vanusmaram
Bhartupada Vanusmaran. Anyone else would like to check? Okay, we can do a word for word with translation. Sa, Udava, Katam, Ao, Sevaya, by such a service, Tasya is Kalena, in course of time, Jarasam, and validity, Gata, undergone, Krista, ask for, Vartam, message, Patibhuyat, just to reply, Bhartu, of the Lord, Padao, his lotus feet, Anusmaran, remembering. Translation. Uddhava thus served the Lord continually from childhood, and in his old age, that attitude of service never slackened. As soon as he was asked about the message of the Lord, he at once remembered all about him. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Transcendental service to the Lord is not mundane. The service attitude of the devotee gradually increases and never becomes slackened. Generally, in old age, a person is allowed retirement from mundane service. But in a transcendental service of the Lord, there is no retirement at all. On the contrary, the service attitude increases more and more with the progress of age. In the transcendental service, there is no satiation, and therefore there is no retirement. Materially, when a man becomes tired by rendering service in his physical body, he is allowed retirement. But in a transcendental service, there is no feeling of fatigue because it is spiritual service and is not on the bodily plane. Service on the bodily plane dwindles as the body grows older. The spirit is never old, and therefore, on the spiritual plane, the service is never tiresome. Uddhava undoubtedly became old, but that does not mean that his spirit became old. His service attitude matured on the transcendental plane, and therefore, as soon as he was questioned by Vidura about Lord Krishna, he at once remembered his Lord by reference to the context and forgot himself on the physical plane. That is a sign of pure devotional service to the Lord, as will be explained later on. Lakshanam Bhakti Yoga, Sya, etc. In Lord Kapila's instruction to his mother Devauti. Hare Krishna. Om Agyanati Mirandasya Gyanajala Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Kadamayam Dadati Swapadam Tikam Vandeyam Shigu Shiyuta Padakamalam Shigum Vaishnavam Shah Shirupam Sagajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sachivam Savetam Savadutam Parijana Saitas Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakham Vidam Cha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadgora Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvesesha Shunyavadi Paskyacha Dejatarine. Hare Krishna. Uddhava thus serves the Lord continually from childhood and in his old age, that attitude of service never slackened. As soon as he was asked about the message of the Lord, he at once remembered all about him. Yesterday we listened to a class of Srila Prabhupada, and in his class, Srila Prabhupada said, well, when we chant Hare Krishna, we never get tired. We could chant day and night, he said. We never get tired. Like we don't get tired. There is no tiredness when we chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. So this verse is very similar to that point that Srila Prabhupada was making in the class yesterday. And I remember, like, in different ashram where I lived, there was a sense that, on the weekend we were slacking. We like all week we'll do Sankirtan, Harinam, Sankirtan service like that. But there was a sense that on the weekend things were like going down. And that was just our conditioning, of course. It's very well known that you work all week and then you enjoy on the weekend. And that stayed, that stayed in the mentality, in our material mentality around devotional service, when in reality, a pure devotee, he wants to do more service on the weekend. He wants to do more service, and as we age, we want to do more and more service. So here Srila Prabhupada describe the difference between material retirement and spiritual retirement. And interestingly, the Varnashram system does have a system of retirement. It's not that there is no retirement. In fact, there is a retirement. And the retirement in the Varnashram system is called Vanaprastha. And that can transform into sannyas or not. But Vanaprastha is retirement. For what? To increase devotional service. The retirement in the Vedic system is not to decrease anything, is to increase devotional service. I remember it wasn't the last time, but a few years ago, 9 years ago, I went to France, and it was my mother's 80th anniversary birthday. And so it was the first time that the 4 children and my mom were together for, I don't know, something like 30 years. Even more maybe. So it was special in a sense for her. And I remember all the conversation at the time with my 3 brothers were about retirement. And I was thinking, that's interesting, because when I left France, they were all excited about their career. We were like, wow, we are going to make money, we are going to do something, or maybe, climb up corporate ladder, whatever they were into. They were so excited. So the next time I see them, like some of them, that's really true. And they're just like so excited about retirement. I say, what's happened? What's happened? Why is it? Why is it that you're so excited about stopping working when you used to be so excited about your job? So we can see how it is. And interestingly, like what I hear from my mom, I don't have direct contact with my brothers, only one, but what I hear from my mom is that they are retired now. They don't need to go to work every day. And they are depressed. They don't know what to do with life, because the purpose of human life is not to work and retire. It's not to work 5 days a week and have a weekend. The purpose of human life is not to enjoy our senses. And even that doesn't work very well. The purpose of human life is to realize ourselves as a spirit soul and eternally servant of Krishna. So naturally, life is empty without that. And life becomes just about like the next plan, the planning, as yesterday Malini was reading and she shared with me. Like the planning never hand in a material energy, never hand. We always plan for happiness. We always plan for more satisfaction. We plan for comfort. We plan for security. Planning never stops. And that planning takes us away from really having a time to reflect. What's the purpose of my life? And what is life about? So we can see that the material activity, there is a natural decline of material activities, different kind of decline. There is a decline that Srila Prabhupada is speaking about in this purport, the decline of the body becoming tired. But there is also a decline of interest, like my brothers. They were so excited. How come they were not excited anymore about what they were to do? And they were so eager to stop doing what they were so excited to do just a few years ago. So there is a decline in the body ability to do work. And there is a decline in interest, attraction, even the best of the best of the best things in the material world is going to fade away. Like if we give ourselves the best meal, like there's the best meal, that's something we love the best, then after a few bites or after a few plates, we are not going to be interested in it. It's just like, I don't want to eat that anymore. I'm disgusted with it. So similarly, it's with all our senses get satiated. Srila Prabhupada said, spiritual life, there is no satiation. But in material life, there is satiation. I remember like my dream from the time I was a child, maybe 6-year-old or something, was to travel. I was so into traveling. So at one point, I couldn't avoid than to give it to myself. And I traveled for 2 years. I gave myself really a lot of adventure, like gave myself fully to 2 years of adventure. And after 2 years, I was blah. I could have continued. In fact, I was invited to go to the west coast of Canada in Vancouver, and then rent a dinghy or buy a dinghy and then float down the Pacific Ocean, shore and stop in different, like more adventure. I was invited to more adventure and to music and so many things I was invited, but I was blah. I was really like, I was thinking it will satisfy me. I had that yearning for satisfaction, that nectar for which we are always anxious. There is a nectar for which we are always anxious inside our heart. And so I was driven by, I'm going to fulfill that yearning for satisfaction. I'm going to fulfill it. And there will be nothing stopping me from fulfilling that yearning. And after 2 years of doing everything under the sun I wanted to do, I felt myself like kind of coming to a place of, there is nothing here. There is really nothing here, nothing to find. So what do I do? Well, part of me wanted to give up, like going to like nothingness, like give up and just sit and wait in the street and like stop to exist in a sense. And the other part of me wanted to say, okay, my life is not useful. It's not going to be useful for me, apparently, because even when I do everything I want to do, that yearning is still there. So I thought in my mind, I'm going to give my life to others. I really felt like, okay, there is people dying of hunger in Africa. There is people suffering in the world. I'm just going to just give my life to that, no matter what's happened, if I die or if I get sick or anything, because as far as I know, there's no point to this life, so I may as well give it to someone else. And then at that moment, almost within hours, really, maybe 12 hours, maybe 24 hours, I met a devotee in the street. And I already knew about Krishna. I had a few encounters about Krishna since I was really 11 years old. But this one, a more conscious encounter with a devotee who I met in the street and said, why don't you come to the temple tomorrow for the Sunday feast? And I did. And then, of course, at that time, life became very meaningful. And that yearning, that nectar for which we are always anxious, that yearning in my heart kind of transformed. There was no need to do anything else but devotional service. So I want to go back to the text because I went a little bit away. I just want to read the beginning of chapter 2 because maybe some of you didn't hear it. So chapter 2 starts with, in chapter 1 is questioned by Vidura. And Vidura inquired, he was traveling for 30 years, he was on pilgrimage, not 2 years. And the same thing, Vidura traveled 30 years and he wasn't satisfied. Why? Because his quest was spiritual, because his desire was renunciation, because his focus was to remember the Lord Krishna and be left alone in that. And so he will go places to places and remember the Lord and meet sages. And when he came to the bank of the Yamuna, he met Uddhava. Uddhava also, he's always carrying messages, Uddhava. So he carried messages to the gopis. There he was carrying messages to the sages about Krishna. So he met Uddhava on the bank of the Yamuna. And when he met Uddhava, he started to inquire from Uddhava. First, when they met each other, he became very emotional because Uddhava was a nephew of Vidura, and like they had a lot of affection. Like devotees have a lot of affection for each other, natural affection. The center of their affection is the pleasure of Lord Shri Krishna. And at the same time, devotees have a lot of affection for each other. So when they met, it was difficult for them to contain their pleasure, their excitement, and their ecstasy. And then Vidura started to inquire from Uddhava. And he started to inquire by about Uddhava's family, because it's etiquette. It's etiquette when we met someone, we don't first speak about ourselves. We don't speak first about asking questions about something pertaining to our lives. So he asked about the Yadava, like the Yadu dynasty, starting with Krishna, Balaram, Mother Devaki, Vasudev, and then the children of Krishna and Samba, the grandchildren of Krishna, and Pradyumna, Aniruddha. He just inquired first about all those personalities. that belong to the Yadus, to Uddhava's family. And of course, that's what Vidura wants to hear about. He wants to hear about Krishna. And then after that, he asked about his own family, the Pandavas, the Kurus, the Pandavas, how they are doing, and what's happening in the palace, what's happening with, Dhritarashtra, what's happening with Yudhishthira, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, Sahadev. So he asked all those questions. And then, so here, Uddhava heard the question, and that's what's happened for Uddhava. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, when the great devotee Uddhava was asked by Vidura to speak on the messages of the dearest Lord Krishna, Uddhava was unable to answer immediately due to excessive anxiety at the remembrance of the Lord. So devotee sometimes is so choked up by the ecstasy of an anxiety of speaking where to start. There's so much to say, and I'm so overwhelmed with emotion being asked to speak about Krishna that Uddhava showed symptoms that he couldn't even express anything. So Sukadev Goswami continues. He was one who, even in his childhood, at the age of 5 years, was so absorbed in the service of Lord Krishna that when he was called by his mother for morning breakfast, he did not wish to have it. So at 5-year-old, Uddhava, and in a purport, Srila Prabhupada described how Uddhava is Nityasiddha, is an eternal associate of the Lord. And of course, the eternal associate of the Lord, it doesn't matter where they are, on which planet they are, they serve the Lord, they continually serve the Lord. And it's so much what the purport here is about, is that there is no material impediment to devotional service. Like a child can serve 100%, be completely absorbed in devotional service. And in old age, that's what we are speaking about today. There is nothing stopping one from devotional service. So Uddhava, at 5-year-old, he was so absorbed that his mom will call him for breakfast. And he was completely fully satisfied, fully immersed in remembering Krishna, and he wasn't even following his mom's calling on him. And then today's verse, Uddhava serves the Lord continually from childhood, and in his old age, that attitude of service never slackened. As soon as he was asked about the message of the Lord, he at once remembered all about him. So that's for some, maybe it's a bad news. In devotional service, there is no weekends and there is no retirement, no vacation either. Yes. So naturally, like vacation means I spend more time hearing and chanting. Vacation means pilgrimage. Vacation means I do something that's going to enhance my ability to actively serve the Lord. And weekend, the same. Like, let's say I have occupational duty. I have, occupational duty. I have job. I have something that I do that's my prescribed duty. Then that's that's material, and that we can also offer it to the Lord for sure. And then during the weekend, or when that prescribed is taken care of, okay, I'm done. Then life excitement is to give every free time that I have to hearing and chanting, like spending time hearing and chanting. So that's how a devotee lives his life. A devotee is eager to use every free moments in the service of the Lord. The other day, I was speaking with a devotee, someone senior to me, and I was spending time with. I was saying like this mentality, and I see how it's driving me crazy. This mentality of like, why will I have free time? So constantly I'm looking for free time. At least there is a part of me that I'm observing that's like wishing for free time. And I can see how that mentality and that attitude inside of me is really not conducive at all. It's not conducive because it's kind of a desire for unplugging from life, unplugging from devotional service, is a desire for the oneness and nothingness, and I can see how it's driving me crazy because it's preventing me from really being fully present with moment to moment. And so I'm working on just noticing when that thought comes of like, oh, I want free time. What is free time? Like it's just conditioning. So like life is so much about unconditioning ourselves and see where the conditioning is. So I have one conditioning about free time, and I can see it's really not conducive. So in spiritual life, there is no such a thing as slackening. Prabhupada used that word in a verse, and he used that word in the purport also. And then in the word for word, it's interesting that Jara-sam is invalidity. So Jara is old age, usually it's translated as old age. And here is translated as invalidity. Invalidity. So when the body dwindle, and it can be, that could happen at 80-year-old or 90-year-old, and it can happen also at 5-year-old. A few years ago, I read about a saint in France, and that was a little girl, and she was born in a Catholic family, and in her childhood, she was very, very naturally devoted, and then she started getting sick. She started to have pain all over her body, and then little by little, she became to be like in a wheelchair, and then our disease developed that the light will be really, really painful, and then sound also. So I think around 11 or 12-year-old, she found herself in a dark room, isolated from the world, isolated from everyone, and not being able to eat and barely drink. I think what they gave her is like some soup to keep her alive. Maybe it's chicken soup. I don't know what kind of soup. It doesn't matter. But what's really interesting about this person is how much devotional service she's performed. I don't know if she's still alive or not. I stumbled upon her by doing some research about Saint Therese of Lisieux. It's not Saint Therese of Avila, another Saint Therese. And I stumbled upon her like that. And I didn't write down her name, so I haven't been able to see where she's at now. However, so she was completely invalid from childhood. And what's happened is that, like, people started to come visit her. People started to take shelter of her. And, she was able to put some effort in speaking just for the sake of people, the sake of enlivening others. And her example became like an emblem of how, for me, how there is no material impediment to devotional service. There is no material impediment to devotional service. Yesterday was the disappearance of Lord Jesus Christ. The disappearance day of Lord Jesus Christ was yesterday, celebrated yesterday. Of course, I don't know. They don't follow a lunar calendar, so I don't know exactly, but that's when it's celebrated. So it was a disappearance day of a pure Vaishnava, Lord Jesus Christ. And him too, he shows such an example of, when he was on the cross, he was very invalid. He was suffering, from material perspective, it's quite gruesome. And he didn't stop. He was praying, and he was sharing a message, a very deep message of bhakti. Please forgive them. They don't know what they are doing. and really wanted to continue to elevate everyone. And of course, the best example we have in our own life is Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, of course, he lived life and he fulfilled his prescribed duties. He fulfilled his prescribed duties. He went to school, he got a degree. When he came out of school, it was time to get married. His father found him a wife. He accepted the wife his father found. He accepted the responsibility that go with being a Grihastha, the responsibility to maintain his family, the responsibility to take care of his wife, his children. So he worked too. He had a pharmacy. First, he was working for the Bose laboratory, and after he got his own pharmacy. So he did all that. And of course, my sense is that Prabhupada's free time were completely used in devotional service. That's what free time is for, remember. There's no such a thing as free time. And that, Prabhupada is described as very devoted, wanted to fulfill the mission of his spiritual master constantly while he was working his pharmacy, raising his children. I don't remember, 4 or 5 children he had. 4? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And raising his children, taking care of his household, all that. He was constantly meditating. While he was doing all that, he was constantly meditating on the order of his spiritual master to preach Vaishnavism to the Western world. And so that, I imagine if there was such a thing as weekend, probably when he was done with his responsibilities to his family, I imagine Srila Prabhupada was chanting, reading, studying, and he also, during his household life, he did translate and purport the entire Bhagavad Gita. And then also he was preaching. He started the League of Devotees in Jhansi. He was traveling for his, in the pharmacy, and he was doing as much as he could with his free time. With his free time, the free time of the household, Grihastha, that was his responsibility. And then in his purport, Srila Prabhupada said, devotional service, in fact, is increasing in old age. Increasing, it's not decreasing. There is no retirement. Oh, now I'm done. Okay, I can just retire. Like when I was in Boston, temple, I was serving in Boston temple. We were doing a lot of preaching all the time. And some devotees, they moved to Alachua. And then the whatever, how it's called. Anyway, what we used to joke about is that Alachua is a retirement place for devotees. That's what it is. It's a retirement. Oh yeah, I done preaching. Oh yes, I was going on the street. Oh yes, I did all that. Oh yes, I did service at the temple. Oh yes, now let me have my Griya. Let me have my house, my peace, my time, and garden, and take care of myself. So that was a joke. That was a joke that, in every joke there is some truth. There's some truth in it. There's definitely.
Alachua is a vegetarian retirement community.
A vegetarian retirement community.
That was the reputation.
The reputation you heard.
Oh yeah, all around the world, really, the devotee world. It's a nice vegetarian.
A nice vegetarian retirement community. So that's not the mood. That's not the mood. That's not Prabhupada's mood. That's not the mood of the Vaishnava. Like that's not the way we think. It's contrary. Srila Prabhupada in his 60s, when his children were raised and his wife was taken care of, everything was taken care of, he left home, he left the comfort of his home, he left the comfort of his wealth, He's left the comfort of family life, of having someone cooking for him, of all that. He left all that. Why? Because he had so many more children to take care of. He had all the entire world to take care of. So in the 60s and 70s, that's what he did. He did when people play shuffleboard. Retirement, it's so painful. It's so painful in the West, what people do with old age. In the West, old age means being a burden. And people are so much burdened that they become like children. There is more and more Alzheimer and all those things. It's a new fad in a sense. And I think it's connected with that sense of like, yeah, people want to play in old age. So play, become a child. Krishna fulfill our desires. That's what people focus on all their life, retirement. And so play, just play. So it's sad. It's really sad to see those retirement community. People come together to play cards. Sometimes they come together to have parties like they are teenagers, and so they dress up and they play like teenagers. But they don't have the sex appeal anymore. It's quite ugly, in fact. And they try to do the old thing that used to satisfy the senses. This is disgusting in so many ways, so disgusting. So in a Western world, yeah, old age is something to hide. Even the difference between United States and Europe is the gap is so big. We are speaking about that with Malini, is that in United States, it's really rare to see an old person, to see a person in the street or in a grocery store, or, like an old person active in the world. And in Europe, my mom is 89. She's living on her own, and she goes shopping every day, and everybody in the neighborhood know her. And she's completely in the world. And all other people who are not as fortunate than her, maybe they have a cane. I remember when I was young, living in the same neighborhood where my mom lives now, there was an hunchback old lady. She was so hunchbacked. She had like the bump on her back was so big, and she couldn't straighten her body. So if she was in America, she would be constantly going to the doctor, going to the physician, going to take drugs, and this and that and that and that. She will be fully taken care of like an invalid, and where the goal is to make you comfortable. But that lady, in my childhood, she was always wearing black. She had a bicycle. And so she will have her bicycle, and she will wobble around her bicycle, and every day she will go shopping. She will be in life. And our goal wasn't to go, do shuffleboard or cards. So she was continuing at least to do a prescribed duty. And I think, yeah, but the Western world is becoming the entire world, that's a mentality, and that's a mentality of hiding old age and pretending that old age doesn't exist. And then it's very painful. Versus a spiritual culture like Varnashram Dharma. In a spiritual culture, in spiritual community, old age becomes the time of wisdom. And the elders, in many cultures, the elders are the wealth of the community, not the burden of the community, not something we need to hide. In fact, it was the opposite. Most culture in the world, the more old you are, the more you become like an asset. You're an asset to the community. Why? Because you have wisdom. And that's even more so true in spiritual culture, in spiritual community, where as old age progress, it's an impetus. It's an impetus for the devotee to give themselves more and more to devotional service, and less to material life. And there is no association. the spiritual life, there is no association. Srila Prabhupada, he had all his organ breaking down. He was, I cannot imagine, because like I was speaking with Zadini yesterday, like if we think of Christ, his death is so graphic that it's gruesome. It's difficult to connect with. I know it's really difficult for me to imagine nails everywhere. And he was preaching. And Srila Prabhupada's, in a sense, his death wasn't that graphic. However, he had nails, big nails, poisonous nails, going in every one of his organs. All his organs were failing. And it was going for months, for days, days in, day out, so much suffering. And what Prabhupada was doing during that invalidity. He was in bed at the end. He wasn't moving so much out of his bed. He was translating the Srimad Bhagavatam for us. He was giving us his purport. And if you read those purports of Srila Prabhupada, they are so enlightening. They are like the full expression of the soul, because there is no material impediment to devotional service. No, we have a class with all the ladies in our communities that have like committed to this process, to initiation, to like got very committed to follow Srila Prabhupada's instruction of chanting 16 rounds, following 4 principles. So we have a group and we are studying together the Nectar of Devotion. And in studying the Nectar of Devotion is really going to all the nuances of what is devotional service. And devotional service is described. It doesn't have any material cause. It's I to Kriya Pratyata. It's like causeless and uninterrupted. And unless it becomes causeless and uninterrupted, it's not going to satisfy the self. So yeah, so let's get completely free of when is my next free time, because that mentality it gets in the way. It gets in the way of apratyata, uninterrupted devotional service. Like when I'm done with, my prescribed duties, and devotional service doesn't mean like I'm running like a chicken without a head, doing so many things. It may be that. Srila Prabhupada did so much. He was doing accounting. He was preaching. He was cooking at the beginning of his movement. He was cooking for all of it. He was even cleaning the bathroom. He was doing so much. So definitely this is devotional service too. However, it's not only that. It's not only that. Srila Prabhupada will spend a lot of time reading, translating also, and chanting. And Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, for 10 years of his life, all he did is chanting, full absorption in devotional service. And there is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, it's first from chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, verse 34, that he said the consumption of devotional service is absolute. So it's absolutely good. And the rendering of devotional service is absolute. So the means and the goal is always absolute, is always one, is always geared to Krishna. So the first verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is Anya Vilasita Sunyam Jnana Karma Anavita. And you Krishna nu Shilanam Bhaktir Uttama Bhakti, like the Uttam, the Bhakti, the devotional service, the ultimate devotional service, the pure devotional service. This is called pure devotional service. It's completely free of jnana, it's completely free of I and my, really. That's what this verse says. It doesn't say that, but it's completely free of I and mine. It's not for me, it's not for I, it's for Krishna, it's for the pure devotees, and everything I'm doing is for them. And that's include my chanting and so on. So it's Anyabilasita Sunyam Jnana Karma. So it's free from jnana, any intellectual exercises. karma, it's free from action, that's fruitive action, it's free from yoga, mystic, and it's favorable towards Krishna. It's always favorable, and it's complete absorption favorable towards Krishna. And that's pure devotional service. And when we come to that platform of pure devotional service, then we will get angry with anything that's getting in the way. Not only will not like think like, oh, where my free time is, like, I don't want free time. I want day and night, like Uddhava. He didn't even go and take his breakfast. I want day and night to think of Krishna. How can I praise Krishna? How can I praise His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada? How can I repay my debt to the spiritual master? The spiritual master who, even until his last breath, he could have chanted. Of course, Srila Prabhupada, the pure devotee, his devotional service is not going to end. He's like doing devotional service now here, he's doing devotional service now there. There's no difference. For a devotee, whatever situation a devotee is, a new body, an old body, a spiritual body, whatever situation, it doesn't matter. Old age, death is all the same. It's all service to Krishna. So for a pure devotee, there is no cessation. There is no cessation of devotional service. It's never satiated. It's never satiated. Srila Prabhupada expressed in the purport. Yeah, so we see in the Bhagavatam there is so many kings that retired, including Maharaj Parikshit, including Yudhishthira Maharaj, including so many kings we see throughout the Bhagavatam, what they do, Maharaj Bharat, that they retire to completely focus on spiritual life. So that's what retirement is about. And retirement is not about to stop, it's about increasing. And that's what old age gives us. It's a kind of an opportunity. And then Srila Prabhupada used a word of maturity, like in maturities, in our mature stage of spiritual life. So of course, maturity, we want to be careful to not interpret that necessarily as old age, because for example, like when all the sages were gathered around Maharaj Parikshit on the bank of the Yamuna, some of them were a few hundred years old, so they were very mature. And still, the one that was chosen to speak the Bhagavatam was a 16-year-old Sukadeva Goswami. Still, even at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains how Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Vedas in his maturity. And there is the same idea with Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami in his maturity, that's when he started to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam to the sage of Naini Sharanya. So in his maturity, when our devotion become mature, more mature, then that naturally the desire to increase devotional service is there. And devotional service for us there is 9 processes of devotional service, and there is no impediment to any of them. Let's say, what's the first one? Hearing, Shravanam. So Shravanam, we hear. We can, even if we are invalid, we can have a tape of Srila Prabhupada playing, isn't it? Mother Nanda, she was sharing about Dravinaksha Prabhu's his last months and his last week and his last days. He had Prabhupada constantly chanting, like Prabhupada, maybe during the day he had classes or maybe bhajan, but mainly it was the chanting of the holy name was going on. And she said it was a day before he left his body. So we imagine, like on a material point of view, that's the time when you receive the most morphine, the most everything to make you avoid being conscious. So I think it was a day before she heard him scream. She heard, Nanda! Like that. Until she came, she felt, oh, he's in pain. So something's happening. I need to go to Dravinaksha Prabhu, my husband. And she said, the tape stopped. So no impediment to devotional service at any stage of life, in any situation, no matter what's happening. There is nothing that can stop devotional service. So we want to remember that, because sometimes we may come to situation in life where our rational mind, we try to always rationalize everything. We're very expert doing that. Our intelligence, I'm reading about King Puranjan when he met a lady, and the lady's intelligence. And our intelligence can take us away so easily from devotional service. So when our intelligence tells us, I cannot practice anymore. This is the situation there. I'm not going to hear as much, or chant as much, or remember as much, or pray as much, or do devotional service as much, or giving myself fully to Krishna as much. When our mind tells us that, we want to remember that simple, a clear teaching from Srila Prabhupada, that there is no material impediment to devotional service. And if I'm telling myself that there is, then it's Maya, it's illusion. It's a material energy trying to drag me back down to think in material ways, which the material energy is going to do that. It's your service. She understands Hai Tukia Pratyata, like she understands Maya, the material energy, the illusory energy of the Lord, understand uninterrupted service. She's not going to stop. She's not going to stop serving Krishna. She's constantly going to come back and come back and come back and come back and come back to remind us that, how easily we can be we can easily be distracted and again absorb ourselves in this temporary world. Remember, my brothers, you were excited about their job. We're always excited about something. Raising children, well, there's moments like, oh, I'm excited about raising children, but a lot is like, oh, I wish I didn't have children. And then when the children grow up and go away, oh, I lament. So anchoring and lamenting, that's the quality of the spiritual life, of the material life. And then the quality of spiritual life is increased desire, increased satisfaction, increased realization, increased closeness with God and Krishna, increased feeling of love, receiving love and giving love. So the only place we need to retire from is Maya, sinful activity. That's what we want to retire from. We want to retire from material conditioning. We want to retire from material life. We want to retire from material thinking. And what we want to embrace is to embrace something that is never going to be taken away by disease, old age, birth, or death. Yeah, that's it. There was something else I remember. Yeah, a human being is especially meant to attain liberation from the bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease. So through devotional service, we get liberation from old age, jara, and of course, all the other three. But that's what we are speaking about today. I'm going to stop here and read again. I had something else I wanted to read. I don't know. At least I will read the verse. Srila Prabhupada at the end of his purport here referred to a verse. And because I have the third canto here, I can just go to it. It's 3:29:10. 3:29:10. I'm just going to finish even though the purport is so great to that verse, but I'm going to finish my class by reading that. It's so beautiful. Those pages are so thin. Okay. Oh, that's it. It's 11 and 12, so it's not 10, it's 11 and 12. The manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flow naturally down towards the ocean, such a devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna. Thank you for listening. I look forward to hearing your comments, realization, question. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yes, Malini.
Your class very much. More inspiration for devotional service. And yeah, like this uninterrupted, like when I was riding horses at Valhalla Farm, it was like 12 or 14 hours a day. And then at night, I would sometimes wake up and go to like check the horses. And then I had 1 day off a week. So on the day off, I would like do the grocery shopping, take care of my laundry, and then I would go to the barn and I was riding more. And there was no free time. Like anytime I had free time, I was like, let's ride horses. So I don't have this mentality in devotional service for sure, but I have like imprint of this enthusiasm. And yes, and I appreciated how you spoke about like the difference between the mundane old people and the devotee old people. That's something that like when I have doubts, it's like it really keeps me going. Like my grandfather who just passed away a month ago, he was like so disgusting on all levels. Like my senses, like all of my senses were completely repulsed by like how he looked, how he smelled, what he was speaking, like everything. I would always like give him a kiss on his front when I would see him. And it's so disgusting on my mouth. Like I would like push my mouth and like, hey, it was like kissing bacon or something. Anyway, and then all the devotee people, they are so beautiful, like radiant and attractive, even like to my material senses. And the last thing I want to share related to what you shared is like yesterday I spoke with my mom about the crucifixion of Jesus and like different ways how we like die. And I said, I think I said like the best is the guillotine. I don't know how. Guillotine, is it English word? Guillotine. Okay, I said that's the best.
I don't know if it's English word, but I understand it.
Okay, good. So I said that I think that's the best. Like, I mean, in terms of like the material, like how fast it is and like. Yeah. And my mom is like, well, but imagine you are like in prison and then like maybe for 2 or 3 days, like, you know, that you are going for the guillotine thing. Yeah. And like, there is so much fear, you know, yeah. And like, well, it's great. Like if you have like 3 days, you can just pray intensively. And it really changed. It's really like, I could see change the perspective. So it was a fun discussion with my mom about that. It started with crucifixion of Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. So old age, distinction between old age and in the material world and the spiritual world, it's huge. And any culture, even let's say like Aborigines or like uncivilized human being, let's say, and I'm putting that like that. And yeah, they honor the elders because the elders they carry wisdom, but the elders in the West, they don't carry wisdom. They still encourage you to have sex. They still encourage you to drink alcohol. It's like they're encouraging sinful activity and they want sinful activities. So there's no wisdom there. Like it's just like they're just like spending their life like uselessly in vain, like Sutta Goswami, no, Shonakarishi. Shonakarishi says like if one uses their life and devoid of devotional service or spiritual life or transcendence, then their lungs are no more than the bellow of a blacksmith. So that's what it is. Like it's breathing and it's doing things that are useless in vain and suffering in vain. And so you appreciated that. And yeah, so your mom was inspired. Your mom was inspired to meditate on, oh, there is not only one possibility in that situation. There's not only the possibility of being in agony, in fear. There's a possibility of using that situation to be in prayers and meditative mood about Krishna. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Ladini. Casey, you have a question?
I have a question. I think maybe Ladini just answered it. But if we're feeling really unhappy with like the circumstances in like our material world, what's the spiritual perspective to have? You know, because I find my mind wanting to like get out of, telling me to just get out of like the circumstances, like the things I've committed to, particularly with like licensure. And then, but I want that to somehow be devotional service. And it can be, I can see how it can be, like I can just see studying as and offering that to Krishna, like every part of the process. But I guess I'm curious kind of like what's the spiritual perspective or the philosophical perspective to hold when I just feel like I've committed to a lot of things I don't want to do.
Yeah, so I think you're responding to your own question. Like, okay, so your commitment, looking at your commitment, is your commitment like to gratify your senses, to enjoy life? Is your commitment to create comfort? And then if those commitments are for all that, probably they are going to be frustrated, and also bring a lot of anxiety. And if my commitment is like, oh, I want to do my licensure to serve Krishna, to be in a place of really spreading his glories, and I want, and then through that, then coming to a place of acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the whatever is going on for you that want to lead you to unplug or wanted to go the different direction or forget about your commitments. And like also like a perspective I like to offer here is attachment. You know, usually when we are planning for our own happiness and comfort, then we are attached. And those attachments are the source of all our miseries. And devotional service is performed without attachment to the result. It's not fruitive. It's just, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to study what I'm supposed to study. I'm going to fill out the paper I'm supposed to fill and see, you know, I'm giving 100% and the result is not up to me. Maybe I'm going to receive my licensure. Maybe I'm not going to receive my licensure. However, I know that if I give 100% to that service that's given in front of me with all my heart, in connection with Guru and Krishna, to serve Srila Prabhupada's mission, to be connected with Krishna, then the rest is not in my hand. It doesn't belong to me. We are not entitled to the result of our work. And often what creates the misery that we want to escape or we want to change direction is our attachment to the result, because we are trying to control the result.
I think that's definitely partially true. I think what's more true is I want to not do these things, you know, like not study, not do supervision, and just read and chant, you know, like, so that's kind of like, but it feels like avoidance or like escaping, you know, so I'm kind of at this place where I'm like, I don't care if I get it or not, like, but I don't know if that's like totally true.
Mm-hmm. So where you're at, it's not so much you are attached to the result, but you're attached to hearing and chanting. So you don't want to do those papers, administration, supervision, getting into that program. You don't want to do that. A part of you is like, why am I doing that? I want to serve Krishna. I want to hear about Krishna. I want to chant about Krishna. And then you're wondering like, okay, is my escaping to hearing and chanting like just an avoidance of my responsibility? And then in the name of, in the name of hearing and chanting, I'm not being responsible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And like that verse from the Gita. There's no guitar around. But that verse from the Gita, it says the consumption is absolute. So even, my sense is that if you were to give yourself to hearing and chanting, and if Krishna wants you to rise up to the responsibility through your hearing and chanting, you will get very clear about that. And you will also, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was a magistrate. And he had a lot of responsibility. Not only was a magistrate, but he was also taking care of the temple in Jagannath Puri. He had so much. He had a family, he had 11 children. He had so much. And just his job as a magistrate was, will have taken 8, 10 to 12 hours a day. But because he was hearing and chanting, he was able to do his work in like 2 hours a day. So we don't want to shy away from our hearing and chanting. That's a pillar. That's a big rock in our lives. And then when we do the hearing and chanting, then everything else is guiding in our lives and manifesting and happening. And is happening a lot easier. Krishna can give you a licensing like that. You don't need to do anything to get licensing if Krishna wants you to get the licensing. Yeah. So yeah, I believe that for you to respond to those desires, even so, maybe it's mixed desire. Devotional service often is mixed with different agendas that we have. Still, to cultivate that desire for hearing and chanting, and also know that by your hearing and chanting, you're supporting your licensing. To trust that, to trust by your hearing and chanting, you're supporting your licenses. Maybe something will happen that will make a shortcut that saves you 20 hours of your licensing, just because you gave your time to hearing and chanting. I know, dear Govinda, you had a very similar experience. You were working I remember when I met you, you were working as a social worker and you had a full caseload. And you were working 2 hours a day because you were doing your PhD on the Maha Mantra and you were running the child protection office and you had a family and sadhana and giving class and taking care of the temple. And so dear Govinda Prabhu, he was in that situation and he was giving to the big rock or hearing and chanting. And not only he was doing his work in 2 hours, but everyone in his office were thinking it was amazing the way his work was done. Mm-hmm. So, like, yes, of course, like to do everything we do, to do it from that foundation of hearing and chanting. And with that foundation of hearing and chanting, like I know, like if I chant 16 rounds in the morning and I read 1 hour, for me, that's, something that's dear to me. 1 hour of Prabhupada's books. Then the rest of the day flows so easily. I do so many things. But if I push back my hearing and chanting, push back like completing my 16 round or push back the reading, then as long as that's not done, I'm not as effective in doing what I'm doing. And I'm not as focused. And I can be so much more easily distracted from my focus. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Anything else? Any comments? Response to the questions?
I had thought, that like when we were talking about free
searching for freedom, like desire to be free. And for me, it's it can be both. Like I have a desire to be free. Sometimes the free is I am desiring to get free of my conditioning and free of material entanglement. Sometimes I'm just like it's like, you know, frustration too, like desire to be free from that. Other times I want to be free from the pain of realize, like sometimes devotional service or bhakti yoga is like painful and challenging, and I want to get free from that. And I was just thinking when we were talking, and thank you for the class very much, that the desire, I think maybe it's, you know, if you're in a conditioned state, then there's a desire for freedom. Otherwise, the soul is free to express itself. So I guess what I was thinking is like, it like all starts with your identity, is what I was thinking, like, well, how am I identifying? And then that sort of like dictates the way I pursue freedom. And we can be so disconnected from our true selves. Like we have this soul inside that's like, you know, wanting to be free and express itself. And we don't identify with it. And then we're pursuing freedom, because I think the conditioned state is it's imprisoning. There's an imprisoning of your consciousness and then the body, and it's not natural, and we don't even really belong in a temporary place at all, doing anything temporary. Like we're eternal souls, and that's all. It was just a thought. Like, if the thing that feels like hopeful is like, if I give time to transform my sense of identity, then I'll be pursuing the right direction. And the philosophy and the practices like all help, but then there's just this like, there's philosophy and there's practice and like activities, but like cultivating a desire, just like an internal world that's like, I just want my soul to be expressed, or I just want that, you know. I was just thinking about like how like it's a really inward process, and like it you know, whether we're going to practice bhakti yoga and try to go for freedom for the soul, or whether we're going to try to avoid bhakti yoga and try to be free from what, I don't even know what I'm saying, but where am I starting from? And as my identity, just putting it out there.
Well, it's Krishna consciousness. So Krishna consciousness is being conscious of Krishna. It's an internal consciousness. It's an internal life. The devotee is described in many places. It's about our internal energy, our internal lives, our internal connection with Krishna. And of course, the nature of the self is to be free. The soul is free, completely 100% free. And anything that we imagine when we imagine we are not free, is just due to our conditioning and the material illusory energy that give us a message that we are not free, because we are free. Every moment of the day and night, we are completely free. Yeah. Right. Spiritual life is so internal. That's why nothing material can take away spiritual life, because it is internal. It is internal. Even at the time of the most crucial, painful time of our human existence is when we come to death. You know, death's coming. And if we have cultivated that internal consciousness of freedom, I'm the soul, nothing can touch me. Try to catch me. What's the story you say sometime?
Socrates?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Srila Prabhupada, he references Socrates. He goes, yeah, well, okay, of course it was in Greek, but it's something of, you can't kill me because you can't catch me.
You can kill me.
You can't find me. It's kind of what Damayanti was talking about. You can't because you'll give me this hemlock. Hemlock's a type of plant poison. You can give me the hemlock, but you can't kill me, you can't catch me. You can't find the soul that I am, but you're seeing me as the body. So you're ignorant, you can't kill me. Prabhupada quotes that.
Yeah, so the soul is unsoluble. It cannot be cut, it cannot be burned by fire, not even by radiation, not even a nuclear bomb can touch the soul. So if we develop, that's the point of this process of Bhakti Yoga, is to develop that internal life, that completely internal life that nothing material can get in the way. Like some things that even at the time of death or the most crucial, difficult moment in our life, we know that. We know you cannot catch me. You cannot get me, you cannot catch me, you cannot do anything to me. And we are really settled and convinced, because it's our reality. It's our reality. That's who I am, and that's what you're looking for, to really connect with the natural quality of the soul, of freedom, the freedom from any material engagement. And that's a constitutional position of the self, to be free from any material entanglement or cage or vehicle.
This world is like, it's so distracting. Like it's easy to ignore the self. Like, I find it easy to just not have that internal awareness and connection to my soul and to that. It's like, it's so easy to just, see everything happening in people, and like there's just so much that each of us kind of get attracted in different ways. Like we're distracted.
Yeah.
It's just really easy, and I can see why some people choose. I mean, it's the opposite of what I've done with my life, but I can see how some people choose to be a recluse or to go. I've been very extroverted, so that's how I get distracted, is in relationships, and I get pulled in and attracted and then distracted and like I can avoid my internal life by focusing on relationships. Because I thought relationships were the most meaningful thing compared to like money or like just so it's somewhat elevated.
It is the most meaningful thing is relationship, just not with the material body.
Yeah. So
it's relationship with devotees, relationship with Krishna, relationship with other souls in service to Krishna. But you get distracted. You can see you get distracted, and the material energy is there to distract us. She's doing a good job. Yeah. Like you think like, I don't have my internal life. Like recently I was with a very dear friend, and she said to me like, I chanted all my round and I didn't even think once that I was a soul. So even like we can say, well, I'm busy doing that and that, responding to my children and my job and thing and that. And I don't have my internal life. But like during japa, we have all the space. There is nothing to do but calling on Krishna and being with Krishna. That's all there is to do. Yeah, we can look like, okay, how many times during japa do I remember that I'm Satchitananda, that I'm the soul, and that having the vision of eternity, that I'm servant of Krishna and I'm serving you all the time, and I'm serving you now, and I'm in service to you now in my constitutional position. Now we can start there, because there is no distraction. It's just sitting and chanting. Yeah. Yeah, and like my the point about freedom, I was saying like I'm looking at the conditioning of seeking free time was not freedom, but like free time, which is driving me a little bit insane now that I'm aware of how what damage it does in my life. It's just.
Well, I appreciate that point. I appreciate all the points you made while in all this discussion. It's Saturday morning. Saturday morning, so it's the beginning of a weekend. And so I've always appreciated this about devotional service. It's like it's 24/7, and it's right, Ted. So like yes, like I've in a sense I don't think in terms of a weekend, whatever, as far as my scheduling or what's a weekend. So okay, so we'll So we'll have Mangalarti and discuss Bhagavatam like that. So I appreciate that, that culture. At the same time, I don't think in terms of a weekend or a vacation. Internally, I still have that conditioning. And so if I look at, I still have that conditioning, if I look at the days of the week where I do waste time on internet or more overeating than usual, more sleeping unnecessarily than usual, it's actually Saturday and Sunday. Right? It's not like I schedule time for more waste of time, but I have that from childhood, maybe from different lives. But it's like, it's Sunday, it's Saturday. It's like from a child, like, okay, you're off from school, you're off from work. So I don't schedule my life that way, but internally I have that. So this is supporting me to like, okay, let's this is Krishna consciousness is timeless. It's not about it's Tuesday, it's Sunday. Sure, we might keep track of that because it's our responsibility to do so. At some level, cognitively, I haven't thought that way for 40 years, since I came to Prabhupada's movement. But internally, I do have that condition. So your class is helping me to be more determined. Saturday, Sunday, it's
Increase service.
Increase service, exactly.
Well, we do increase service, because we have those morning programs on Saturday and Sunday. And usually we do hear and chant, at least, in the community for longer hours on Saturday and Sunday. So in that sense, we do that. And then, every temple I lived in, the intensity of devotional service will on Saturday and Sunday, instead of increasing, like that. Yes. For the temple devotee, but then those who live outside because they were living outside, then they will come to the temple and do all the cooking for the Sunday feast and be so excited to be at the temple because that's what they do with their free time. But when you live in a temple, that's what you do all week. Devotional service on the weekend. Thank you. Thank you all. Entourage Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanande.